The first mistake the Zerani made wasn't attacking Earth. It was assuming humans would die quietly. Commander Orzak of the Zerani strike fleet hovered above Earth in his war barge, confidence pulsing through every scale on his obsidian skin. To him, humanity was just another backwater species ripe for conquest. No different from the dozen other civilizations his people had erased without breaking stride. He had read the reports, skimmed the history, violent, fragmented, stubborn, but fragile, short-lived, disorganized, emotionally volatile. Their sun was already aging. They had barely stepped beyond their moon. What threat could they pose? So, the invasion was swift. Orbital bombardments took out major cities within hours. Communication networks crumbled. Their global defense grid, if you could even call it that, collapsed within days. The Zerani began the harvest. They expected resistance, sure, but nothing they hadn't faced before. They weren't ready for Marcus Wynn. A former U.S. Marine, Marcus had seen hell before. 2 tours in a desert war zone where friends bled out for oil and lies. A 3rd tour working black ops no one dared admit existed. He'd buried too many comrades. Watched his wife walk out one cold November morning, tired of the silence in him. And when the sky tore open with alien fire, he wasn't surprised, just irritated. The day Earth fell, Marcus was in Montana, off-grid. Solar, water tank, an old rifle he maintained like religion. He'd left civilization because he didn't trust it anymore. But now it was gone, and the ghosts he tried to leave behind stirred awake. They killed his brother. That's when it became personal. Jacob Wynn was a paramedic in Boston, working overtime when the Zerani firebombed downtown. He died pulling children from a burning bus. A survivor uploaded a shaky video before the towers fell. Jacob, crawling out of the wreckage, carrying a girl missing half her leg. Then a bolt of plasma hit him from above. Disintegrated him mid-run. Marcus watched it on a salvaged military drone link 3 days later. No sound, just the girl screaming and his brother turning to ash. He didn't cry, he packed. Over the next few weeks, Marcus did what he did best. He disappeared into old tunnels, bunkers long abandoned, whisper networks of former soldiers, outlaws, and survivalists. And he wasn't alone. The Zerani thought they'd crushed Earth, but they hadn't noticed the fire smoldering in its ashes. It wasn't a rebellion. It was a vendetta. And Marcus? He wasn't trying to win back Earth. He wanted to make the Zerani afraid, not just retreat, not just negotiate, but to remember humanity as the mistake they swore to never repeat. He started small, ambushing Zerani patrols in the Rockies, stealing their weapons, learning their language, booby-trapping their forward bases so violently it made their generals start questioning the intel, but it escalated. Always. Because Marcus didn't know how to stop. He wasn't after justice. He was after retribution. By the time he reached the orbiting salvage vessel in the Mojave, Marcus had a team. Ex-special forces, insurgents from broken cities, even a few defected Zerani who realized too late that their empire lied. They weren't soldiers anymore. They were ghosts. And when they hijacked that salvage ship and took it off-world, that was the second mistake the Zerani made. They assumed Marcus was done. But he was just getting started. The salvaged Zerani ship creaked under the unfamiliar weight of human boots. Every panel, every console, every blinking light was built for creatures who stood 7 feet tall, smelled like burnt copper, and had fingers too long for any glove a man could wear. Marcus didn't care. He wasn't here for comfort. He was here for revenge. "Nav systems online," muttered Cole, a former cyber warfare officer who had once shut down an entire government's infrastructure from a laptop in a dirty Berlin basement. Now, he was hunched over a Zerani interface, tapping through layers of alien script. His voice was hoarse from the recycled air. "We're not cloaked, but we're off their comm grid. Best I can do." "Doesn't matter," Marcus said. "We're not hiding." The others stood silent. 7 men, 1 woman. All armed, all hardened by what they'd seen. Cities turned to dust. Children buried beneath collapsed homes. The realization that humanity had been deemed irrelevant by a species that barely considered them intelligent. They weren't soldiers anymore. They were something older, more primal. Monica Torres, a demolition expert from Argentina, wiped oil from her cheek with the back of a gloved hand. "Where to first?" Marcus opened the holographic star chart. It projected out of a Zerani orb, red lines crisscrossing known star systems. He stabbed a finger at a cluster near the outer rim. "Rallic Prime," he said. "Zerani Weapons Depot. Mid-tier planet. Heavy security, but not too heavy. We hit it first. Loud." "For what?" asked Deke, the wiry Texan sniper who hadn't spoken much since they'd buried his wife in the rubble of Houston. Marcus didn't hesitate. "To make them remember what fear feels like." There was silence again, but this time it wasn't from hesitation. It was anticipation. 2 weeks later, they dropped out of hyperspace like a splinter in the skin of the galaxy. The salvaged vessel, now painted jet black and rebranded Ashbourne, crept toward Rallic Prime's orbit under the mask of a meteor storm. The cover wouldn't last, but it didn't need to. Inside the ship, Marcus moved with a focused rage. He checked each charge Monica had rigged, small but powerful detonators designed to rupture oxygen systems and fuel lines. He reviewed Deke's sniper position overlooking the depot's north compound. He recalibrated every stolen Zerani rifle, their grips too large but their blasts brutally efficient. As the ship approached the drop zone, Marcus stood before his team. "No speeches," he said. "Just this. If you get a shot, take it. If you fall hard. If you survive, make sure they don't." They nodded. No hesitation, no fear. Not anymore. The Ashbourne plunged toward the planet, its trajectory jagged, unnatural. It broke the atmosphere and spun violently before leveling out just in time to deploy the drop pods, metal coffins carrying the humans toward hell. They landed hard, louder than they wanted. The Zerani guards scrambled, not expecting resistance, let alone an attack from within. The depot was a sprawling complex of obsidian towers and curved storage vaults, lit with pulsating blue runes and surrounded by magnetic fences. Marcus's boots hit the dirt first. He rose with his rifle and opened fire before the nearest guard even finished screaming. Plasma bolts flew through the air, red and white flashes cutting down the tall, insect-like creatures with terrifying precision. Torres blew the first charge. One of the towers erupted, its top half spinning off into the sky in a trail of molten metal. Sirens wailed in a shrill, otherworldly tone. More Zerani poured out. Commanders, drones, riot guards in heavy armor. Deke picked them off from the ridge. One shot, one corpse. Inside the chaos, Marcus moved like a shadow. He wasn't a man anymore. He was a reckoning. He knifed through the neck joint of one guard, kicked a rifle out of another's clawed hands, then dropped 3 more with brutal efficiency. The rage in him was bottomless. He remembered Jacob's face every time he pulled the trigger. By the time they reached the depot's core, the weapons vault, it was already over. Hundreds of Zerani lay dead, the ground slick with black blood. Cole hacked into the control room, gasping as sweat poured down his face. "I've got their entire database," he said. "Fleet movements, planetary defenses, supply chains." "Download it all," Marcus ordered. "Then blow the place." Torres handed him the detonator. "Want the honors?" He didn't smile, just pressed the button. The explosion lit up the night sky of Rallic Prime, visible for miles. A Zarani moon watcher, stationed in an orbiting ship, stared in frozen horror as the core depot, untouchable for centuries, turned into a burning crater. And in the crater's center, painted in plasma fire across the wreckage, were 4 English words. You started this war. The Zarani Empire reeled. For the first time in generations, fear spread through its command structure. They weren't afraid of armies or fleets. They had those. They were afraid of humans, of ghosts, of whispers in the dark saying a species once mocked as savages was now hunting them across the stars. In hidden war councils on central command stations, leaders shouted over one another. Some demanded escalation, others urged diplomacy. But one message played over and over in intercepted comms from Ralak Prime. They knew our systems. They fought like predators. They didn't retreat. They didn't negotiate. They destroyed everything. And worse, one Zarani officer had survived the depot assault. Half blind, one arm missing, burned nearly to the bone. He was found whispering a phrase over and over in broken galactic standard. One of them looked at me, like he'd already buried me. Back aboard the Ashbourne, the team sat in silence. The adrenaline had faded. Their bodies ached. Blood stained their armor. Torres had a cracked rib. Cole was coughing up black from smoke inhalation. Deke sat alone, eyes vacant, polishing his rifle with trembling hands. Marcus stood in the darkened bridge, staring at the stars ahead. He could hear their breathing, feel their pain. He knew this wasn't victory. It was just a message, a warning. They would come now, in numbers, in rage. The Zarani wouldn't tolerate defiance. Good, Marcus thought. Let them come. He tapped a console and opened the data Cole had stolen. Star charts lit the bridge in a red glow. Fleet positions, supply routes, names of generals, civilian colonies, weak points. He wasn't here to win a war. He was here to unmake an empire. We hit Draelos next, he muttered. Torres, still holding her side, looked up. That's a civilian planet. They train soldiers there, breed command class. Cole frowned. There'll be innocents. Marcus didn't blink. They didn't spare ours. The silence that followed wasn't agreement, but it wasn't resistance either. The line between humanity and vengeance was thin, and Marcus had long since crossed it. That night, while the others slept in shifts, Marcus sat alone with Jacob's photo. A grainy, black and white print, his brother in his paramedic jacket, holding a puppy in one arm and flashing that tired, crooked grin he always wore after a long shift. I'm not doing this for justice, Marcus whispered. You know that, right? He stared at the photo, his fingers shaking. I'm doing it so they never forget what they did. Then he folded the photo carefully and tucked it back into his vest. Not over his heart. He didn't believe in symbols. He kept it near his shoulder, the same one that still ached from a bullet he took during a failed rescue op years ago. Some pain, he figured, should never heal. Draelos hung like a soft jewel in the void, bathed in the twin suns of its binary system. On the surface, it was beautiful. Verdant forests, clean atmosphere, sprawling cities shaped like spiraled flowers. But beneath that beauty lay the truth. This was where Zarani High Command trained its elite. Strategists, war planners, interrogation specialists, future generals and political executioners. The best and worst of their kind were born here, molded here, and unleashed across the galaxy. Marcus didn't see trees. He saw graves waiting to be dug. The Ashbourne approached under heavy radiation cover from a passing neutron belt. Cole, face pale and twitching from exhaustion, guided the vessel between debris fields and magnetic anomalies, like a surgeon navigating arteries. Planetary defense grid is thick, he warned, eyes locked on the console. But there's a back door. They don't expect inbound from this orbit. We punch in now. We've got a 10-minute window before they lock us. Then we're in and out in 8, Marcus said. This wasn't like Ralak Prime. There'd be no firefight, no open assault. Not this time. Draelos wasn't just a military target. It was symbolic. These weren't foot soldiers. These were the thinkers, the cold-blooded architects of Earth's fall. And Marcus wanted to hurt them mentally first, break their sense of security, shake their illusion of control. Torres, armor still patched from the last mission, sat beside him, chewing on a broken stim patch. How many are we targeting? All of them. She let out a breath. You're serious? There are no civilians in a system that trains war criminals. Deke cocked his rifle, then leaned back against the bulkhead. You gonna say that again when the kids come running? Marcus didn't flinch. You saw what their children did in New York. The bombs, the mind scramblers. They don't raise civilians, they raise killers. No one argued after that. They dropped into Draelos through an underground access tunnel, an old maintenance route from a decommissioned terraforming era, long forgotten in official schematics, but still viable for a small team. Cole had pulled it from the archives before they left Ralak Prime. That intel cost them a full day of rest. But it was worth it. The tunnels were dark, moist, and pulsing with faint energy. Bioluminescent fungi lined the walls. Strange whispers echoed down the corridors. Zarani tech often interacted with the biosphere in unpredictable ways. To the team, it felt like they were walking through the lungs of a sleeping beast. Marcus led the way, rifle raised, eyes scanning every shadow. Behind him, the others moved like ghosts. When they emerged into the sub-levels of the Academy dome, the silence was suffocating. No guards, no alarms, just vast marble corridors lined with training rooms and genetic archives. Murals of Zarani war victories covered the walls, proud depictions of planets burning, civilizations falling. One panel showed Earth's moon cracked like a dying egg. Torres spat on it. Cole found the main security access, slicing into their surveillance feeds. They don't even have guards here, he said. Whole planet runs on predictive defense algorithms. They think if you're smart enough to find your way in, you're already one of them. Marcus grunted. Let's prove them wrong. They moved methodically. Deke stayed in the atrium with high vantage. Torres began rigging thermal charges across the structural pillars. Cole uploaded a virus into the educational mainframe, corrupting centuries of data, erasing archives, rewriting doctrine with nonsense and human war propaganda. Marcus walked deeper into the compound alone. He found a room filled with young Zarani, 12 or 13 cycles old, gangly and arrogant, watching combat simulations and laughing in their native clicking tongue. When the door opened and Marcus stepped in, they froze. He didn't shoot. He stared at them, silent, rifle at his side. One of them, braver than the rest, stood and snarled something in their language. An insult, probably. Marcus stepped forward and dropped something onto the floor. A memory chip. Human origin. The young ones stared, confused. Watch it, he said. It's what your kind did to Earth. Then he turned and walked out, sealing the door behind him. A minute later, the gas charges Torres had placed in the ventilation system hissed to life. Non-lethal, but it would knock them out for hours. Long enough. Back at the main hub, Cole's voice crackled in his earpiece. We're done here. Set charges, Marcus replied. We leave in 3. The Ashborn ascended before the first explosion tore through the dome's central tower. By the time the Zarani figured out they were under attack, the entire Academy structure was collapsing inward, Precise demolition. No radiation, no firebombing, just structural death and digital chaos. But the real strike? It wasn't the collapse. It was what the Zerani found afterward. Thousands of their brightest minds, memory wiped, data cores rewritten with human war footage, civilians dying, children screaming, cities burning, and in every training console, one phrase blinked in red. You trained monsters. Now monsters hunt you. In the following days, the Zerani Empire fractured more deeply than ever. Debates raged across their Senate. Some called for total extermination of all remaining human cells. Others said humanity wasn't worth the cost. They'd already lost 2 key worlds. Supply lines were stretched. Morale was plummeting. One admiral publicly resigned, claiming the humans were an evolutionary curse sent to punish arrogance. But none of that mattered to Marcus, because the next target wasn't military, it was sacred. The next target was Vexen Core. Vexen Core was the heart of Zerani spiritual authority, an artificial planet built around a dead star, layered in ancient codes, rituals, and philosophies that dated back millennia. It was their Vatican, their Mecca, their Jerusalem. Untouchable. Until now. Back aboard the Ashbourne, Marcus stood before his team, eyes hard. Vexen is where they justify everything, he said. The genocide, the mind wipes, the breeding programs, all of it. Their priests declare it holy, sacred, necessary. Torres stared at him. You want to destroy their religion? No, Marcus replied. I want to expose the lie behind it. I want to show them that no god they worship can protect them from what's coming. Deke leaned forward, voice low. You planning on killing priests now? Marcus didn't blink. Only the ones who prayed over our mass graves. There was a long pause. No one argued, because they all remembered those graves, and the way the sky burned when Earth cried. The stars around Vexen Core didn't shine. Light bent away from the artificial planet, distorted by the ancient gravitational engines embedded in the dead star at its center. The Zerani believed the darkness was sacred, that it symbolized purity, freedom from the corruption of lesser species. Ships approached in silence. Broadcasts here were encrypted with spiritual codes. Entry required ritual and reverence. Marcus came with war in his heart and ash on his hands. The Ashbourne drifted into range, cloaked under Zerani religious clearance codes, stolen from a cardinal Cole had personally hacked back on Rallick's data grid. They disguised their approach by matching the signal patterns of a high-priority pilgrimage fleet, one too important for scrutiny. Cole's voice was low in the dim red glow of the bridge. We get one pass. After that, they'll know the clearance is faked. Marcus nodded. That's all we need. The plan was simple, brutal. Vexen's spiritual leadership gathered once every 50 cycles in the Great Chamber to recalibrate the Empire's moral codes, what the Zerani called Kalthar, or purity balance. That meeting was happening today. All 13 high priests would be in the sanctum, and today, Marcus would bring their gods down with them. Get Torres in, he ordered. We plant charges in the chamber, leave before they lock the place down. Cole hesitated. It's a sealed sanctum. Only clergy can enter. No weapons allowed. No tech. I'm not sending her in armed, Marcus said. I'm sending her in clever. Torres appeared behind him, already donning the ceremonial robes Cole had forged from synthesized silk, scraped off the robes of a dead priest from Drelos. Her face was calm, but her eyes gleamed with fury. They think humans are too barbaric to understand faith, she said. Let's prove them wrong. Marcus handed her a hollowed scripture book. Inside were the detonator triggers, built into pages printed with Zarani scripture. "Get in. Set it. Wait for my signal." She took the book without another word. Torres moved through Vexen Core's shadowed corridors with confidence born not from faith, but from purpose. The silence here wasn't just respectful, it was oppressive. The Zarani clergy glided, their robes sweeping the obsidian floors like ghost smoke, their faces painted with the ash of star-forged rituals. She blended in, voice lowered to mimic the gravelly cadence of a female priest. She bowed when others bowed, chanted when they chanted. No one questioned her. That was the thing about fanatics. They saw what they expected to see. Inside the great chamber, she paused. 13 high priests stood around the central altar, a massive floating shard of black crystal said to be carved from the heart of the first Zarani god-king's tomb. The priests chanted, claws raised, eyes glowing in trance-like unison. Torres stepped forward, heart steady. She placed the scripture book on the altar's base and bowed. Then she knelt and began reciting a funeral rite, one she had memorized from hours of Cole's playback files, every syllable perfect. No one stopped her. She rose and backed away. The detonators were set. Meanwhile, Marcus, Deke, and Cole worked from the outer sanctum. Cole had injected a worm into the Zarani ritual broadcast stream, normally closed-looped to preserve purity. Today, it would be very public. As the priests continued their ritual, a faint hum began to rise in the chamber. They didn't notice at first, until the crystal altar began flickering. Then the images began. Projected above the altar, Earth, mid-invasion. Zarani strike ships vaporizing hospitals, mind scramblers tearing through refugee camps, children twitching and frothing from neurobombs, priests blessing the war effort from their ivory towers. Then came the footage from Drelos. Their brightest students passed out in poisoned air, their core databanks rewritten, their symbols defiled. Then Ralak, the crater, the message. "You started this war." Gasps echoed through the chamber. One priest staggered back, clawing at his eyes. The altar exploded. Not outward, inward. A precision implosion that folded it into itself in a blink, warping the air, ripping gravity from its axis. The priests screamed as the chamber shattered, the force field seal snapping as Torres escaped through a side passage, moments before the lockdown sequence activated. Back on the Ashbourne, Marcus watched the chamber rupture on the screen. The high priests were gone, vaporized or crushed. The sanctum flooded with vacuum, screams lost to space. Cole turned slowly in his chair. "You just blew up the heart of their religion." Marcus didn't speak for a long moment. Then he whispered, "Good. What came next wasn't war, it was chaos." The Zarani military fractured. Some commanders refused orders, believing divine punishment had fallen upon them. Others doubled down, demanding full extermination of remaining humans. Riots broke out on fringe colonies. Religious enclaves purged their leaders in panic. Supply chains disintegrated. Priests were lynched. And through it all, Marcus's name spread like plague. They called him Vakor Nazar, the Endwalker, the man who defied gods. But Marcus wasn't done. He didn't fight for Earth anymore. Earth was gone. He fought so the Zarani would never forget. He fought so that even 1,000 years from now, when some alien child asked about humanity, the answer wouldn't be history. It would be fear. And they would whisper, "Do not attack the humans. They'll hunt you across galaxies." The hunt wasn't over. It had only evolved. Marcus stood at the edge of the Ashbourne's tactical deck, looking at the star map Cole projected into the air. Red markers flared across dozens of systems, each one representing a target that mattered less now. Supply chains, war factories, breeding worlds. Marcus had already made his statement. But now he wanted something else. Torres limped into the room, her ribs taped, blood dried along her temple from shrapnel during the Vexen withdrawal. "You've been staring at that map for 2 hours," she said. Marcus didn't look away. "They think I'm a symbol now, a ghost, some demon their gods couldn't kill." She gave a half smile. "They're not wrong." He exhaled, sharp and quiet. "I don't want to be a symbol. I want to be the consequence." Cole entered behind them, tossing a data tablet onto the console. "We've intercepted another Zerani fleet movement. Looks like a mobile war council's been assembled on Zarketh Station. 7 surviving generals, 2 ex-priests, and a political architect from the Empire Corps." Marcus turned slowly. "What's Zarketh's classification?" "Black grade, classified military hub, moving fortress, constant orbit." He nodded once. "We take it." Deke scoffed from the corner. "That's suicide." "Only if you think like a soldier," Marcus replied. "We don't go in shooting. We go in unseen." Zarketh Station was a nightmare of rotating defense rings, overlapping shield fields, and fleets of patrolling drones. No one could get within 50 kilometers without being shredded. But Marcus had no intention of getting close. Instead, he let himself get captured. The plan was insane. Cole hacked a low-level Zerani merchant ship's transponder, broadcasting distress signals in a dialect used by slave traders. Marcus, bruised and bloodied, courtesy of Torres' convincing handiwork, was placed in a stasis pod and sold by a forged digital manifest to Zarketh's interrogator unit for questioning. He awoke shackled to a chair in a sterile gray cell, face to face with General Threk. A beast of a creature, horns trimmed, one eye replaced by a glinting implant. The room smelled like chemicals and death. "You're him," Threk growled. "The Endwalker, the thing the priests warned about." Marcus didn't speak. He stared. "You think killing priests makes you a god killer?" Threk leaned forward. "You're still flesh. You still bleed." Marcus smiled faintly. "Then try." Threk snarled, drawing a serrated blade, but the lights flickered. Once. Then again. Then everything went black. Outside the chamber, the Ashbourne's virus, buried deep in the merchant ship's manifest, activated. It jumped from file to protocol, corrupting subroutines, confusing the station's AI core. Lights shattered, airlocks cycled. Fire suppression flooded random sectors. In the chaos, Torres, Deke, and Cole breached through a maintenance shaft and moved like shadows through the underbelly. Cole's voice crackled in Marcus's earpiece. "Doors open in 30 seconds. Hold tight." Marcus nodded slowly and looked back at Threk. "You should have killed me when I was weak, but you waited. You needed to see me, to believe it." The general lunged, but the cell doors hissed open mid-strike, and Deke's bolt rifle answered before the blade could fall. Threk dropped like dead weight. Marcus rose slowly, massaging his wrists. 1 down, 9 to go. The raid wasn't elegant. It wasn't meant to be. They found the War Council huddled in a reinforced command dome, barking into comms, issuing false orders, desperately trying to keep fleets from crumbling as the system-wide blackout spread. But no one answered. Not in time. Deke's shots were surgical, Torres's charges were brutal, and Marcus moved like wrath itself. He didn't offer mercy, not anymore. Each Zerani leader died knowing exactly why. He made sure of it. In the final moments, as the last general gasped under his boot, Marcus leaned close. "We warned you. We begged for peace. and you laughed." He squeezed the trigger. Silence. By the time Zarketh's emergency fleet arrived, the Ashborn was gone, leaving behind a station flooded with corpses, burning with the fire of broken pride. Zarani command broke, not shattered, broke. Because now there was no face left to lead, no voice to unify, and in every broken system, on every flickering broadcast, one name echoed, not as legend, but as threat. Marcus Wynn. But the rage didn't fade in him, not even now. Torres caught him staring at the stars again a week later. "We've won," she said. "You broke them." Marcus didn't look away. "There's one left." She frowned. "One what?" "Guilt." She waited. "When I saw Earth die, I didn't cry," he said. "I didn't scream, I made a list, and every name I crossed off I thought I'd feel something. Peace, redemption, anything." Torres moved closer. "And?" He looked at her. "I feel nothing." She didn't respond. Because what could she say to a man who became vengeance so completely he forgot what it meant to be human? Marcus had erased empires. He had shattered Zarani faith, slaughtered their generals, dismantled their war machines. Entire sectors whispered his name like it was a curse, a warning, a myth that made soldiers desert and priests denounce their gods. But no matter how many stars he burned, no matter how many commanders he put into the dirt, the emptiness inside him only deepened. He was hunted now, too, not by the Zarani, but by himself. The crew of the Ashborn barely spoke these days. They moved like fragments of people, shadows caught in the wake of something too massive, too angry to control anymore. Cole had stopped shaving. Torres stared at nothing for hours. Deke barely slept. They had won, and they were all breaking because of it. Marcus noticed. He just didn't care. He was focused on one final target, Arx Viren. It wasn't military, it wasn't political, it wasn't spiritual, it was personal. Arx Viren was the hidden world, where the Zarani conducted cultural cleansing, a planet off the grid used to erase what didn't fit their vision of galactic perfection. Thousands of human prisoners, scientists, children, artists, soldiers, had been sent there during the early stages of the invasion. None ever came back. The Zarani never acknowledged its existence. But Cole had found it, buried in encrypted fragments during the Zarketh station breach. Coordinates, inventory logs, biometric scanners, and video. Marcus watched exactly 3 seconds of the footage. A girl, maybe 10 years old, chained to a wall, eyes wide with confusion, not fear. Muffled screaming in the background, a Zarani technician scribbling notes. Then he turned off the feed. He didn't need more. They were going to burn Arx Viren to ash. The planet didn't show up on maps. It was hidden inside a binary system warped by radiation clouds and gravitational flares. It had no orbital defenses, only deep-core sensors and shielded surface stations. The Zarani didn't expect ships to come here. That was the whole point. But Marcus wasn't coming for a war. He was coming for a reckoning. They landed under the cover of a magnetic storm that would last exactly 47 minutes. Long enough to breach, long enough to execute, long enough to leave. Inside the facility, they moved fast. No negotiations, no threats, no warnings. The Zarani scientists didn't fight. They begged. Marcus ignored them. Room by room, they found the prisoners. Some were alive, some weren't. Cole stayed with the survivors, guiding them to evac. Torres rigged the main labs with incendiaries. Deke stalked the halls, executing any Zarani he found with a whisper and a shot. And Marcus? Marcus went deeper. He found the control center, clean, sterile, untouched by violence. And there, strapped to a chair, was a man he once knew. Dr. Elias Verne. Human. Alive. Eyes sunken, skin gray. "You," Marcus said, voice low. Verne's lips trembled. "Marcus, you worked with them." I didn't have a choice." Marcus walked slowly around him. "You oversaw this place." "They would have killed me. I was useful. I kept some of them alive." "You kept yourself alive," Marcus corrected. He pulled out his sidearm and stared down at the man. "You remember Jacob?" Verne flinched. "You signed off on the Boston culling," Marcus said, voice quiet and empty. "I saw your name in the files." "It wasn't my call." Marcus didn't let him finish. The shot echoed through the control center. Verne's body slumped. He didn't scream. He didn't beg. And Marcus didn't blink. They left Ark's Viren in flames. The surviving humans, what little was left of them, watched as the lab towers collapsed, as the sky turned red with fire. No one spoke. No one asked questions. No one cried. Because the truth was simple. There was no home to go back to. Only stories. Back on the Ashbourne, Torres sat across from Marcus, her arms crossed. "We saved people," she said. Marcus nodded. "And killed people." Another nod. She leaned forward. "Do you even know the difference anymore?" He looked at her then, eyes flat, distant. "Does it matter?" She didn't answer, and he didn't expect her to. Because this wasn't about winning. This was about making sure they never forgot what it cost to start something with humanity. There were no more targets. Not on any screen. Not in any stolen archive. Not even in the frantic whispers of dying Zerani operatives. Ark's Viren had been the last piece of the machine that raised Earth, and Marcus had broken it beyond repair. The galaxy was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of silence that settles not after peace, but after shock. The Zerani Empire had collapsed inward. Whole sectors fell into rebellion. Colonies defected. Priests tore their symbols off. Military fleets drifted with no commands to follow, no chain of command, no unifying fear, except one name etched into every scorched data wall: Marcus Wynne. But even as empires crumbled and systems fell dark, Marcus felt nothing. The rage had nowhere left to go. It simmered in his bones, searching, scratching, clawing for another reason to burn. It didn't find one. And so it began to turn on the man who had carried it for too long. He stopped eating. Stopped sleeping more than an hour at a time. Torres tried to reach him. Once. "You need to stop before you disappear," she said, her voice tired. He just stared out at the stars, like they owed him answers. "I'm not finished," he muttered. She leaned on the table, the dark circles under her eyes like bruises from carrying too much hope. "There's no one left to fight." "There's always someone," he replied. It was Cole who broke the silence, dragging in a comm drone he'd picked up from a neutral sector trade port. "You should hear this," he said, tossing the cracked drone on the console. Marcus didn't respond, so Cole activated it. A voice played. Raspy, unfamiliar, but human. "To whoever's still alive, if you're hearing this, we made it off-world. Not many of us. A few ships. We've been hiding, running. But there's something you need to know. Earth's core, it wasn't just bombed, it was mined. Someone took something, and whatever it wasn't Zerani tech." The recording crackled. Static rolled over a few words, then returned. Transmissions from an unmarked planet. Not Zerani. Not anything we've seen. They're watching, studying, waiting. Marcus sat up, finally. What planet? He asked. Cole pulled up coordinates embedded in the data packet. Outer fringe. Beyond the mapped systems. A dead zone. The file name said one word. Covenant. They reached it in 8 days. The Ashborn creaked through uncharted space like a hunted animal. No beacons, no patrols, no warning signals. Just a black void so still it felt wrong. Covenant wasn't on any chart. But it was real. The planet appeared like a bruise in space. No sunlight, no moons, no orbital traffic. Covered in metallic structures that weren't Zerani, human, or anything the crew had seen before. Tall spires with circular bases. Angular scars across the crust, as if the planet had been hollowed out from within. Marcus stared at it, and for the first time in years, he felt a flicker of something strange. Not fear, not hope, but doubt. Run a scan, he ordered. Cole did, and frowned. There's energy, he said, but it's not power signatures, it's biological, massive, deep below the crust, dormant but aware. Torres leaned over the console. You think it's Zerani Black Ops? No, Cole said, almost whispering. This is older. Marcus tapped the side of his rifle. Then we find out what they took from Earth, and we end it. They landed near one of the metallic spires. It was taller than any building Marcus had seen, twice the size of Earth's pre-fall towers, its surface black and pulsing like a living thing. No doors, no windows, just a single slit near the base, wide enough for a man to walk through. Marcus went first. Inside, there was no light. But the air was warm. They walked through endless corridors of smooth, obsidian-like material. No markings, no resistance, just walls that felt wrong when you touched them, almost soft, like skin stretched over steel. Deke murmured, "This place is breathing." He wasn't wrong. Every few steps the walls pulsed, faintly, like a heartbeat. Deeper in, they found it. A room, circular, lined with glowing pillars filled with liquid memory. Scenes flickered within each one. Earth cities, Zerani warships, humans fighting, children, blood, fire, over and over. And in the center, a sarcophagus. 10 feet tall, made of something that looked like both stone and metal. And beneath the glass lid was a human. Or something that used to be. Marcus stepped closer. It looked like a man. Pale, thin, marked with glowing veins and implants of unknown design. Eyes closed, breathing slow, peaceful. Torres whispered, "He's alive." Cole's voice cracked. "That's not human tech." They stared in silence. Then the man opened his eyes. It didn't attack. It didn't speak for several minutes. It just sat up, looked around, and locked eyes with Marcus. "You're the last of them," it said. Its voice was human, but laced with something ancient, something that vibrated in the bones. Marcus didn't lower his weapon. "Who are you?" "I was human once," it replied, "before the war that never made your history books." "What war?" The thing stood slowly, movements graceful but unnatural. "The first time humanity was targeted, long before Earth was mapped. We fought them. The architects, the ones who build empires like yours, breaks." Marcus narrowed his eyes. "You're saying this happened before?" "Yes, and I was chosen to survive. Not to warn. Not to lead. To remember." Torres stepped forward. Remember what? The being looked at her. That no matter how powerful you become, someone always watches, and when they decide you're a threat, they don't attack with guns. He turned to Marcus. They take your home. Marcus felt cold settle in his spine. What did they take from Earth? The being stepped to one of the glowing memory pillars. They didn't want Earth's metals or your tech. They wanted seed, data, memory, pain. They feed off extinction events. Cole whispered, They eat our collapse? In a way, the being said. They archive what makes a species burn, its suffering, its downfall. They call it purification. They collect, and then they disappear. Marcus stared. And the Zarani? Just pawns. They were allowed to rise to push you over the edge. Your resistance was expected. But your survival? Unacceptable. Torres clenched her fists. So, what now? The being smiled, faintly. They'll come again, and this time not with puppets, but with purpose. Marcus raised his rifle again. Then we finish what they started. The being laughed softly. You can try, but the ones who collect galaxies don't die easily. Marcus's voice was ice. Neither do we. The silence on Covenant was broken by the slow hum of the sarcophagus. The human, whatever he was, stepped away from the glowing pillars, his limbs graceful yet unsettling, as if the years inside had tempered his body into something beyond human. Marcus felt the weight of centuries in that moment. The hunt had changed. The galaxy had changed. Show us, Marcus said, his voice cold as iron. The being inclined its head, motioning toward the pillars. These are snapshots. Memory echoes, each one a civilization's death throes. Yours, theirs, theirs. Cole leaned forward. Can we download, understand? The being nodded. But what you take from them, they will know. Marcus glanced at Cole. Do it. Cole, shaking, interfaced a stolen Zarani neural link to one of the pillars. Light bathed his eyes as he scanned its streams, images, emotions, data points, psychographic sequences. He gasped. My God, he whispered, this is every civilization's final collapse. The fear, the betrayal, the guilt, all channeled. Torres swallowed. She looked at Marcus. They called it purification. They harvest the pain, Marcus repeated, voice low. Store it. They feed from it, like parasites. The being turned to them. They built harvesters, megastructures that anchor to dying planets, absorb the collapse, archive souls and memories. That's Covenant. A tomb library. Marcus clenched his jaw. What do they do with it? The being's face was unreadable. They judge. They learn which species fight back, who cries, who destroys themselves, and they move on. Marcus exhaled hard. Why show us all of this? To scare us? To break us? The being's eyes glowed. To give you a choice. You can run, hide, pretend it's done, or you can fight them. Torres squared her shoulders. We fight. Marcus hesitated. You're asking humanity to stand hungry in the jaws of a leviathan. He paused, then nodded. Fine, we fight. They took the Covenant core. Day and night bled together while they moved deeper into the planet's cavernous megastructure. The halls were silent, save for the pulsing of the archive, an ambient drone of collected lives. Torches of deep green light lit the spires, casting warped reflections on metal and glass. They found the control nexus, a spherical chamber where hundreds of ribbons of light converged like a galaxy in miniature. The being stepped forward and laid a hand on the nexus. "Here you can rewrite." Marcus clenched his rifle. "Rewrite what?" "Your message." The being's voice echoed. "Send it out. Not just a warning. A challenge." Cole shook his head, his face drawn. "This is crossing lines. We're activating ancient alien tech that monitors the emotional, psychic breakdown of extinct races. We don't even know how it'll affect us." "It doesn't matter." Marcus turned away from the nexus. "If this thing destabilizes, if we fail, at least we try." He looked at Torres. "You ready?" She nodded. Together. The being stepped back. "Link with the nexus. Use your signal. Use your minds." Inside the nexus, reality blurred. Marcus felt memories scroll through him, not just his own, but the entirety of humanity's pain. Hiroshima, Dresden, Rwanda, November 9th, Earth's demise at Zarani hands. The memories merged with the harvested grief of a dozen near-extinct civilizations. Tears, screams, dying breaths, last words. He fell to his knees. Torres screamed, Cole writhed, but Marcus remained. He gritted his teeth and lifted his head. He spoke, silent whisper to the nexus, but heard across space. "We have survived. We have fallen. We have fought. We will rise, attack us, erase us, harvest our ashes. But know this, we remember. We bleed, and our pain is our weapon." The nexus shuddered, lights converging, then blasting outward in a wave of psychic resonance. The pillars pulsed violently. Alarm klaxons wailed, veiled through skulls across the structure. They rushed to the exit. The nexus imploded behind them, the dome collapsing in shards of light and metal. They crashed through corridors as Covenant caved in structure, seismic waves echoing across kilometers. They escaped just before the spire collapsed entirely, sealing Covenant within its own tomb. The signal went out. Across the broken maps, across systems under new human rule, across Zarani holdouts, and across the Watchers. A pulse of defiance so raw and clear it shattered complacency. Waves of psychic static rolled through star charts. Screens blinked. Meditative shrines went dark. Zarani brigands dropped bombs. Entire fleets hesitated. They listened. For the first time in millennia, the galaxy heard Earth's voice. Months passed. The Covenant signal ignited an insurrection across borders. Old alliances rekindled. Colonies tossed off Zarani relics. Former enemies' eyes united under banners of human resistance. Not just humans. Others, too, awakened by the signal's resonance. The Zarani holdouts attempted counterattacks. They failed. Executions of high-profile war criminals, trials, no mercy, but not out of hatred, for accountability, to show the galaxy that humanity stood for justice, not vengeance. On the Ashbourne, now refitted with new crew and new resolve, Marcus reclined in the bridge. Torres sat beside him, reading a holo transmission from a rebuilt Earth colony, the first one off Covenant. Children picking crops, engineers constructing solar arrays, survivors living, rebuilding. Marcus stared at the screen, tears on his cheeks. "You did it," Torres whispered. He nodded once. "We did it." Epilogue. 1 year later. A memorial satellite orbits Earth's new colony. It records all memories of Earth, triumphs and tragedies, art and pain, so no one ever forgets what happened and what came after. In space, a fleet forms, the human dominion. Small, yes, but not for power, for protection, for remembrance. Their motto, broadcast across every ship, city, and signal. Remember, resist, rise. And somewhere, far beyond the boundaries of known space, beneath the ruins of Covenant, the heartbeat of the harvested archives echoes, now silent, drained, not of life, but of meaning. Humanity stood, and their harvesters fell. Galaxies will remember. Galaxies will fear, because humans don't just live, humans rise.